What's up, everybody? Happy DNA and IQ Ruby release date. It's also St. Patrick's Day. So, for all the Irish people that aren't me, happy St. Patrick's Day. So, already got a few questions in the chat. This is basically going to be, I've done these before. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take requests. And so I'm going to pull video clips as we go through this. If you have any questions, like we've already got some in the chat here. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but if I have an IQ Nano Pearl and an Astrophysics in my bag, would the IQ Ruby be a complement to either at all? Yes, it would fit underneath both of them because it's got the same core as the IQ Nano, but quite a bit weaker core, or quite a bit weaker cover. It's actually got the Astrophysics cover, but the Astrophysics has a quite a bit stronger core. So it would fit under both of those. Picked up my DNA already. Love these live videos. Sweet. I do have my tickers down here at the bottom. That's a cool new feature of the streaming service here. I am wearing the Dragon Ball Z, the DBG design. So 10% off at checkout at CoolWick.com. Should I get the DNA if I have a proton physics? There's going to be some overlook in good Lord. There's going to be some overlap in the hook potential department, but the DNA is a little weird. It's strong, but it's not super dynamic. It doesn't shape a whole lot. It's strong, but it's controllable. So the proton physics digs more. It just has more raw traction. I actually might show. Now, the problem is that my DNA I shined up, and the only proton footage I have is sanded. So it's going to be hard to see the difference. But having thrown them both, the proton physics is more dynamic. It's sharper on the back end. It hooks earlier. It digs earlier. The DNA on paper is the strongest ball they've ever made, but like on the lane, it's surprisingly tame. So it's something like the Parallax was technically very, very strong, but it was also really smooth. And so it kind of faked like it was weaker than it was. So it's hard to explain when something should be stronger than it actually is. And it's tough explaining the differences versus what it is on paper versus what it is on the lane. On paper, there's a ton of overlap. On the lane, I think that the DNA is actually a step down from the proton. The DNA lives somewhere between like a proton physics and a Rubicon. So the IQ Ruby would be a step down or a ball down from, and it's hard to, again, that's one of those where the IQ Nano Pearl is a lot stronger cover and the Astro is a lot stronger core. Those create some kind of different looks on the lane. It's not necessarily different hook potentials per se. The Astro has more torque and the IQ Nano has more traction, more teeth, more actual dig, and those produce different shapes on the lane, but the hook potentials are somewhat fairly similar. But the IQ Ruby would be a step down because it's got a weaker core than both and the same cover as the Astro. So it's definitely it doesn't have a weaker core than both. It's got the same core again as the IQ Nano, and it's got the same cover as the Astro. So it is a step down overall. Like yours, one of the very few that do the left side. And there's not a whole lot of lefties out there, and so there's not a whole lot of lefties out there. So the demand for lefties isn't that high. So, do you still prefer the Fate over the Ruby now that you've had some time with it? Yes, because the Ruby is just a little bit too weak to throw very often on the left side. I like the way that the core rolls, but the cover is just a little bit too clean and responsive for the left side. I might have to actually take the cover down a little bit, but the Fate, having that almost, or actually having a little bit stronger core and a stronger cover helps hook a little bit more and blend things out a little bit more. How big of a gap is there between the Zen and the IQ Ruby? They feel like they roll somewhat similar, but the Zen definitely hooks more and it covers more boards. However, the Ruby is, I think, the strongest IQ Pearl, or the strongest feeling IQ Pearl so far. For me, I've got, they're probably 3 to 4 boards difference just because the IQ gets further down the lane and it's a little bit sharper than the Zen. But the Zen rolls so much heavier and is still, it's a stronger ball across the board. And so I have the Zen about 3 or 4 boards stronger than the Ruby. All right. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start with the DNA first, and I'm going to show James here. So on paper, and you've seen Storm's put out several informational videos. The EXO cover stock is the new strongest, the technically strongest cover in the catalog, and this super coil core 247 RG, super crazy low. You're not going to see anything really much lower than that. The differential is 053, which is high, but it's not the highest one out there. But they, again, with all the rules and fractions and USB-C showing that they don't mess around, you're not going to see a whole lot of stuff over 055, 056. They're just not. I mean, even the code core at 258 or 058 is a mess. It's not a mess. It's just a little worrisome. Once you get that close to the edge, because the limit is 060. They can't go above 060, and so 058 is so close that it almost makes you a little bit nervous. The PSA strength is 023, and this is the strongest one that Storm's put out in a while, at least stateside. So this is just a monster core. On paper, it's got the same RG and differential as the gem and the exotic gem, but I think that core is an 019 PSA, or intermediate differential. And that's if these numbers are 15 pounds. They kind of go off the 15-pound numbers. So it's monster core, very strong cover, and I think that shows itself more in mid lane control rather than like down lane torque or like super aggressive ball motion. Just because something's stronger doesn't mean that it's going to appear more aggressive. Sometimes, most of the time when something's stronger, it's going to dig in earlier, and then because it digs in earlier, it ends up being smoother down lane. The DNA is definitely very smooth. So I'm going to go on ahead and add this in here. So what we're going to look at here on the first shot, we're still having the problems with the box surfaces. I don't know what's happening, but this thing was a marble out of the box. My mix hooked more. And so we tried to film, and because I've done so much of this already, I've already shown Night Road, Absolute, Revenant, TNT. We get the idea. And so wasting more time just showing, oh, well, this is okay. Well, this, the out-of-box surface isn't any good on this one anymore. We get it. So here's a shot. This first shot here was out of the box. And it just kind of said nope. And so he warmed up with it. He threw maybe 6 or 7 shots. It hooked a couple times, and then it started doing that. And so we just decided, I threw mine like 4 or 5 shots, and it did that. And so we just decided to pack up and resurface them and move on. So we came back. We came back later. We got them resurfaced. Just took it down to 1,000 on a resurfacing machine. James, we just took back up to 2,000, and then mine I actually went from 1,000 to polish. And so here's what we're looking at now. You can see it actually finishes on the back end. This is on Kegel Chromium, challenge pattern, just under a 7-to-1 ratio, 42 feet long, 25.5 mils. So it's high side of medium for both length and volume. The DNA is interesting because the asymmetry doesn't really add torque so much as it adds super mid lane control. Like, this thing does not miss the mid lane. However, sometimes it misses the back end. It doesn't like a whole lot of angle. And most of the time, these bigger, stronger balls aren't built for an angle. If they can handle it, cool. But if they're not built for playing a ton of boards, they're built for digging in early and being super controllable, but not being like super early and slow like urethane. Must be his inconsistent release and lack of practice. Yeah. James is obviously a terrible bowler. Can't tell the difference between when something's, getting slimy and hard to hang on to, and when there's actually a problem. So he did spend a lot of time fiddling around. And this is the full bulk of, I'm going to pause it for a second. This is the full bulk of all of the, the whole filming, or the vast majority of the filming session, basically. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't want to get into right here, but the whole point of a ball review should be to find the best representation of the ball reaction. I remove strikes. I also remove terrible shots. If somebody, we're on a challenge pattern, if he tugs one an arrow, or dumps one an arrow, that's not, you're getting zero value out of that. That's not adding anything to the video besides maybe making you feel better that whoever's being honest to show all the shots. What it really is just a wasted shot. And people might say, well, I like seeing the misses in there because they tell me whether the ball is forgiving but that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Forgiveness is based on the bowler style, the ball, lane surface, lane condition, and again, smoother balls. It's really easy to tell which direction a ball is going to be forgiving on what kind of a pattern. A ball might be every ball is going to be forgiving to the outside on a house shot because there's friction out there. You throw it out to the friction, it's going to hook off the planet, maybe even overhook. As soon as you put a little bit of oil near the ditch, everything's going to hang. So it's more of a product it's not real. Like, people talk about, well, this ball hits harder than this ball. It's like, well, if hit was something you could build into a bowling ball, why wouldn't they put it in all of them? It's one of those things that I am trying to show you the best representation of the ball reaction for a review. That's what I'm trying to show. And sometimes a ball, bowler, whatever else matches up better to what we're doing, and sometimes it doesn't. Now, something like this ball, and again, he's moving around a little bit, and we're trying to show you some balls naturally will cover more ground than others. Some, like this one really likes playing straight. And so as we move deeper, he can make it work, but it kind of naturally resists the angle. So Storm needs to acknowledge the issue and show what they're going to do to fix it if they want me to be a customer again. That's fair. I mean, I'm frustrated too, because most people throw the ball out of the box, and with other companies where you can just drill a ball and throw it, I recommend, and there's a lot of people again that always change the surface just because they want to know where they're starting, how that they can get it back to, or how they can get it back to there, because you'll never be able to replicate box surface again. But there's a difference between not quite being fine-tuned out of the box and being completely unthrowable. And we're not in it just needs a little tweak to dial it in for my game type of thing. It needs a full 10 minutes on 1,000 pads on the machine and then completely, totally reset. So most people throw the ball out of the box. They don't either know any better, or when they go buy something, they buy what they want. If they want something that's going to dig in and hook a bunch, like a DNA, they go buy a 2000 grit DNA, and they want to throw it out of the box because they bought what they wanted. If they want something shiny that's going to go down and flip, they'll buy an absolute because that's what they wanted. They don't want to have to change. It's like, why buy something just to have to change it? That doesn't make sense either. So, I mean, but to completely, and again, factory surfaces, they make hundreds of balls a day. And so you never know. Some balls we get look really dull. Just because it says 3,000 on the box, like the Hype Solid, I think comes at 3,000. Mine looked like they rolled it around to the parking lot, like it was at 1,000 grit, and I had to it just burned up like crazy for the first several shots I threw it. Other people, you get them and they look almost kind of shiny, and so you never really know whether your ball was the first one on a new set of pads or the last ball on an old set of pads. And so just because it says a specific box surface, there is kind of a limit back and forth. If I go down to 1,000 and back up to 1,000 and then I polish it, or I go to 1,000, 2,000, I know exactly where I'm at. I know exactly the age of the pads. I know exactly everything. I have more control that way. Yeah, I mean, this is fair. It's not so much a matter of adjusting surface. I can do that. I can't get a real picture of what it does because I don't know what the surface is. Yeah. I mean, it's just fair. And I mean, sorry. I mean, this just is what it is. It's not my job to lie for the company. But at the same time, they don't intend for this to have, they want you to be able to put holes in stuff and go out there and shoot 300 with it so that you can post it on social media or so that they can share it and whatever else. They don't want you to get a ball out of the box and then have it, get slick after a couple shots and then not hook. That's not good for business. They don't want that. So this isn't anything that they intended, and they're definitely working on it. I just don't know. Thank you, puppies. All right. Anyway, rant off. Continue. We must be getting a delivery, perhaps, perchance. So there is oil outside on this pattern. Again, it's under a 7-to-1 ratio. Thank you, Mistel. So there is oil outside on this pattern. However, it's not like 7-to-1 is almost like better. Okay. 7-to-1 is almost better. Like if you get easier house shots, sometimes they're tougher because there's a puddle in the middle and there's a whole bunch of dry on the outside, and it gives you over under the opposite direction. Now he had, I noted in the review that if he kept it like the break point, like 8, 9, 10, or I guess 10-ish, it looks, if he hits that rangefinder down lane, he'd struck every single time. Or if he throws it out the window like that, it's just not getting back. And he's got higher speed, so getting something to bend for him anyway, he gets it off his hand so clean and his speed is so high, he has trouble getting really anything to cover boards. He can make it happen. I think sometimes we've seen before, he can make it happen on house shots, but on something with a little bit of volume and a little bit of length, then at the end here, he, zips it a little bit too hard. These are the things that are hard for me to cram into a review. When I go to make a review, and we're going to start over again here in a couple shots. Well, I guess there's some lane level shots here. But when I can't cram everything into a review, I can't explain every single shot. I can't explain, well, he slowed that down a little bit, or he got around this one a little bit more, or he did this or that. You've got to have kind of a finer eye while you're watching this and watch every single shot very intently, rather than just kind of watching for, oh, it goes this long and it shapes this hard. All right, so we're going to go back through it again here. This one again, it just, that's obviously not his fault. The ball just fades. So once we get it, if this will actually, the frame rate will actually keep up here. The one problem with doing it this way, All right. I'm going to add it back in here and see if we can. I like doing this because I like being able to talk to people. I like, you know, this is a whole lot easier than trying to cram all this crap into a 10-minute review. He has trouble getting stuff to bend, period, but this one, he can normally get stuff, especially with a ball this strong. Doesn't normally have this much trouble getting it around the corner. But again, you know, it's a big, smooth ball. It doesn't like covering angles, or it doesn't like covering boards. And so again, if he hits the tracer board down lane, it doesn't matter how deep he gets, it will hook and look good from there. If he lets it out past that, it's a little touchy. So it's one of those angle covering boards things. I think that's what tripped him up so much. I think he expected to have more forgiveness and recovery to the outside than hold inside, because the last several big balls that we've had, Proton Physics, Supernova, the Gem even, they handle angle better than this. They are surprisingly angular for how much they also hook. And the DNA gets back to one of these old school, it's like an earlier and smoother phase 2. So if you like the control and general showing general characteristics like that. I mean, it's phase 2-ish. It's just a little earlier and smoother. But again, you wouldn't think that when you're deep with a phase 2, you're not going to try to bounce it off the 5 board. And this is kind of the same way. If he hits that tracer board around that 9-10 zone, no matter how far left he is with his feet, it's going to get there. Showing a ball is speed sensitive is good information, yeah. But it's, aside from having like Specto or something to show you every single stat that's on there for every single shot, there's just so much that I can't pack into a ball review, and I can't explain every single shot. Now for what he's used it a bunch so far, because on a house shot, when he has a little bit more forgiveness to the right, he can play second arrow and just laser it down the side. His first ball average with this ball on a house shot is literally like 250 or 255. Like once he knows once he has to get in past about this third arrow zone right here, that's when it starts getting a little wiggly down lane. And so he's been dropping down into his absolute. He also drilled an absolute here recently. And so he'll drop down into that, or a top speed, or if he still needs teeth, he just drilled an NV Tour too. So if he needs something that still has the teeth but will cover the boards a little bit easier. So let me go on ahead and get rid of this one, and we can pull in something else. What does everybody want to see here? I think I showed the Supernova in the review. I can go on ahead and pop that in because that's the most kind of direct comparison for the moment here. And I know that I actually have that. And it gets tricky even sometimes. Supernova Chromium Cut. All right, so the Super with NEX, it has a little bit more visible dig early. It's also a little bit sharper down lane. And the trick, yeah, I don't like the Supernova either. Too many mixed comments about it. It's one of those things where it shapes a lot for how much it also hooks. And so it kind of fakes you out. As soon as you trust it to dig, then it wants to go a little long. Or as soon as you trust it to be controllable, then it wants to flip. And so NEX is a really weird cover. And I think the thing is he expected this to be closer to his Nova than it is. It kind of rolls like the Nova, so he went pinned down on this. But that just makes it a little, he wasn't expecting it to be this long and flippy. He was expecting it to be earlier, rounder, smoother, more controllable like the original. And even pin down actually just made it worse, because pin down with a ball that has this much differential and this much intermediate differential, even if you drill it pin down, it's still gonna flare. It's still gonna flare like crazy. So when you take a ball this strong and drill it pin down, all you're really doing is raising the RG. The differential and the int diff doesn't come down far enough to really make that big of a difference. Once you get over like an 040 diff, it, you know, diminishing returns. But what he is doing here is he's raising the RG. So that's the biggest difference, or the biggest effect on the lane, I think, is raising the RG to the point where, raising the RG to the point where the ball goes longer, and then when it hits friction, it's still going to turn. So, sorry I'm late, but did we already do the gem and the DNA? We have not done the gem yet. I'll probably show it in comparison to mine. I don't have the gem on this same pattern, but it'll be close enough. The DNA is weaker than the gem, but stronger than reality. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would agree with that. The DNA is technically a little stronger on paper than the gem, but the gem with the micro tracks, it's NRG, but it's micro tracks. It's more, it wants to dig in earlier, and so I think the gem has more visible, applicable traction. The DNA's strength is more in crazy, crazy stability. If you just need flat out plain dig, then you're going to get a gem. But if you want more the mid lane stability and control with teeth, instead of like the gem is teeth, it's just teeth. When you need something, it's controllable, but when you need something to dig and to hook, the gem is the ball. The DNA is more, I guess, refined, I guess you'd say. Does the gem being earlier than the DNA have anything to do with the colors? Nope. The gem, that's the cover stuff. Like this cover is technically stronger than the gem cover as well, but the gem is also earlier than the super, just because this whatever formula, or the NEX, but whatever the formula difference is, it's longer and sharper than most balls that have this much traction. Supernova versus Dark Code. We're just doing DNA and IQ Ruby comparisons here. This isn't kind of an open thing. I can pop up the infinite here. Let me see what I've got for him on the infinite. This one. Oops. Infinite. Yeah, let me see here. I'm not really sure that I've got infinite. Yeah, I don't really have anything separate. I can do the infinite. I'll show that later when I don't have any good footage for him. I've got the infinite for me on this pattern, but I just have the infinite for him on a house shot, so it's not going to be quite close enough. The infinite's amazing. The infinite is really good. Now, comparatively, the infinite is longer and sharper, but it still has that same kind of roundish look to it. The infinite doesn't act like a prototypical pearl. When people think about pearl balls, the infinite acts more like a stereotypical solid. So it's longer and sharper than the DNA, but they do fit really well together. The infinite's a straight step down if you want something that's going to handle angle better and be a little bit longer, sharper, and weaker. So I will hit that comparison when we flip sides here. Let me figure out what else. Let's see. Let me grab the TNT as long as we're at it. Where's the, okay, James, resurface. We want the resurface. So the TNT is interesting because they kind of look on top of each other, but they're not. The TNT is symmetric and it's got a crazy, a whole lot weaker cover on it, but that core is so early. I mean, it is so early that it's just chuggy. The DNA, like the phase two, it acts a lot like, again, the DNA and the phase two act a lot alike. It doesn't, like the phase two doesn't chug. It's pretty clean down the lane. It revs later. The TNT hits the lane and just chugs and chugs. I think the DNA is a little bit longer and sharper, but for all intents and purposes, I think the TNT hooks a lot more than it actually is supposed to on paper. I think it realistically actually hooks more than it should on paper. But he's got the same kind of thing with this. Like the DNA doesn't want to cover boards, and the TNT doesn't want to cover boards either. We're more surprised about the DNA not wanting to do it because the TNT you'd kind of expect. It's symmetric. It's a super early core and kind of a medium-ish strength cover on it. So the fact that it doesn't quite want to cover the boards, it'll do it. But no, thank you for the donation here. I have pretty high tilt, almost 30 degrees. Looks like Angel may have super high tilt and gets around the ball quite a bit. Do you know her tilt? And actually it's backwards. High tilt is having a low amount or a smaller amount of tilt. So they say having low tilt is more. It's a little backwards. So you just saying you have a lot of tilt. So almost 30 degrees of tilt. Angel goes a little back and forth. Angel goes a little back and forth. Sometimes she spins a little bit more and sometimes she doesn't. She's kind of getting back away from it. Right now, she's in the like 10 to 15 degree, probably 15 degree zone. So it's not up at 30 degrees, but it's not, end over end, so to speak. So I would say about 15 degrees for her, but it has probably been as high as 20-25. Yeah, the TNT is. Thank you again for the donation. If you have any further questions on that topic, just let me know. The TNT is coming back from where the DNA did not for sure. Yeah, the DNA is. It's just not built to cover boards. And the TNT, again, really isn't either. However, he can make it do it a whole lot easier just because it actually gets big earlier somehow. And see, it makes me feel like an idiot explaining stuff like this because on paper, the DNA is crazy, ridiculous amount stronger than the TNT. Whoops. But part of this is the TNT has a little bit cleaner cover, and so it's not using so much of it so early. The DNA, it's really hard to explain. It's so much more stable. I mean, this ball's really stable in the mid lane, but the DNA, the asymmetry and all that stuff works for it early, and then it's not. The TNT still shapes a little bit down lane. It's still slow. It's still smooth. And I'm not entirely sure. You'll have to watch some other reviews. James's DNA might not be entirely typical either because mine handles angle better than his. It still doesn't really want to, but it handles angle better than his does. These two are definitely in the same vein, though. I prefer the DNA because the TNT, mine kind of wants to bog down a little bit. It rolls so heavy, and it just the symmetric part of it. This look is different for me. My DNA is earlier, it's stronger, it handles angle better, it follows more the typical what you'd expect from on paper. Let me see what else we've got here. I might go ahead and move on to me here in a minute. Let's see what else I've got on here. Do not have any absolute footage for him yet. He didn't drill a gem or an exotic. I don't believe. Oh, here's something. I do have the infinite physics for him on the Nationals pattern. It does have a little bit more shine on it. The surface is not exactly in the same place. And this is on the 2019 Open Championships doubles and singles pattern. It's also 42 feet, but it is just over a 2-to-1 ratio, so it's flatter. And it's 28 mils, 27.9, 28, 28.3, 28 force. So it's a little more volume, a little flatter. And there's a little bit less surface on this, but you can see the same kind of roundish overall shape. James throws 15s, and you can see that if he, that's more how flat this pattern is. I don't think it would have gotten back from there on Chromium, just because Chromium has got a little bit more volume in the middle. On this pattern here, you almost have to flag it out there because it's so flat in the middle that if you get it in at all, you just forget about it. Chromium at a 7-to-1 ratio, like I was saying earlier, it's almost an easier pattern than a house shot because you don't have that super difference, that super cliff where you've got just super crazy dry on the ditch and there's a puddle on the inside. So if you miss out, it just screams sideways, and if you miss in, it just goes for days. That's one of those things where if you miss left, the ball doesn't hook enough, and if you miss out, the ball hooks too much. It's one of those counterintuitive things. Chromium at a 7-to-1 makes a whole lot more sense. You can tell after you watch a few shots, you can tell exactly what's going to happen, 30 feet down the lane. This one's a little bit different because this is super crazy flat. So there's not a whole lot of real estate to throw at, but he's going to be aiming for, instead of like on Chromium, we're looking like 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. Here, you're going to be looking for like the 5 board. If he gets it inside of that, we start it over again, but just watch how much tighter this shot is. He can peel it off of there. So 4-5 is what we're looking at. I think this one he throws out the window. Yeah, he hits 2 on that one, and it doesn't even think about it. So a 2-board difference between those 2 shots is the difference between striking and missing the head pin. That one he gets out to 3, but he slowed it down a little bit. This is the running commentary I wish I could have on videos, but then they end up being this long and nobody wants to watch them later. That one hits about 4-5 down lane. I think this was one of the ones that, yeah, this one hooks too much. No, 4-5. There's one of these that hooks too much, and he just gets it a couple boards inside. That one he peels off 3, but he also slowed it down a little bit. He's rolling a little bit more. The trap is, though, if you miss inside like that one hit 6 and had no chance. And it looks like a bigger miss on the screen than it really is when you're actually watching boards, but that one hit 5. Anyway, about the differences here. You also asked a question earlier that I missed. Sorry, Matt. Sorry to keep comparing it to it, but the Infinite a bit stronger than the Astro. It's actually quite a bit stronger than the Astro. REX Pearl is a lot stronger cover, both on paper and on the lane, versus the Astro. I'm thinking about picking up an Infinite soon, but this new DNA is supposed to be like my Phase 2, but more, so now I'm torn. Yeah, again, the DNA is like an earlier, smoother Phase 2. The Infinite might be a little bit more difference for you. Could it be due to the drilling? I think you were talking about the TNT versus the DNA. The layouts, I think, on those were actually fairly similar. The TNT is just one of those balls. Every once in a while, they have stuff like that. Like for anybody that's thrown all 3 of the hyped balls, the hyped hybrid chugs. So it's so much earlier and so much stronger than the other 2 balls. It just doesn't make any sense because on paper it should just, the solid's the strongest and then hybrid because they've all got the same cover formula. The hybrid chugs like crazy though. So it slows down and it just hooks off the planet. Infinite versus IQ Ruby. The Infinite is it's the astrophysics is a huge core upgrade from the Ruby, and then the Infinite is a huge cover upgrade from the Astro. So the Ruby is 3 balls down from the Infinite, probably. So anyway, you can see the same, and again, the Infinite covers boards. It's easy to cover boards on this pattern, though. Honestly, the patterns are a little bit different. So this makes everything shape quite a bit. However, just you can see it's got that same roundish look to it, but the Infinite is longer and sharper than the DNA. It covers boards earlier or easier, so that'd be a whole lot. Matt can't type and I can't talk. So the Infinite is longer, it's sharper, it covers boards easier, but I think it is a step down from the DNA technically on as far as like torque and actual dig. It's hard to see until you get on like a truly wet long pattern, and then you see these truly strong balls show up. It's a whole lot easier to, when you have more free friction, the balls that are designed for all that friction hook off the planet, but they're designed to hook on lighter volume conditions, like the stronger balls hook on heavier volume conditions. So it's one of those things it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. But the stronger balls need the oil to get down the lane. They're counting on having the oil. They're designed for the oil so that they have something to kind of counteract how strong the ball is. The weaker balls need friction. So if you put them on, it's really easy to think, okay, well, this ball hooks a million on a house shot, and then you take it to something. That's what gets people at nationals, where they go to nationals and say, oh my God, there's oil everywhere. And then I get there and I'm like, no, there's plenty of shape, there's plenty of friction, there's plenty of hook. But I'm, again, throwing the right stuff for the condition. You can't, you might throw something lower end at your house because they don't put a whole lot of volume on house shots. We're talking 19, 20, 21 mils, something like that. So you might throw a high road on your house shot and think, man, this ball hooks more than my phase 2, or it hooks more than one of these balls that's supposed to hook more. And then you take it to nationals and you'll watch a high road go 70 feet. Just because it's built for friction. It's not built for volume. It's a whole lot easier to see in the golf world, where the clubs kind of make sense. But it's just like a driver needs a longer hole. Like if you hit a driver 250 and you're on 150 yard par 3, the driver will not work there because it needs the length of the hole. You can make it work if you really do some dumb stuff, but it's probably better to just hit like a 7 or 8 iron that goes 150, because that's built for a shorter hole. Where a driver, you can't just say, okay, well, this ball is, or this club's getting the ball closer to the pin than this stupid driver's hitting it way too far. Like, well, you need a longer hole for the driver, and people don't make that correlation with bowling balls. So let me see what else we've got. We might just go on ahead and move on to me, because I think we've kind of ran this into the ground so far. I don't think I have any. I might have some phase. Okay. I've got phase 2 on chromium with James. So that would be this would be the next logical one. This is the same pattern that I filmed the DNA on. And you can see tons of familiarity. The phase 2 is a little bit longer. It is a little bit sharper. It covers boards a little bit easier, but it's not as strong. So it's using more of its strength further down the lane. But you can see, you have to be able to, I'll play the DNA here after this to refresh your memory. But this is, I mean, aside, even colors, everything. Like these two are so on top of each other. It's just the DNA is earlier, more. I don't think it's more stable in the mid lane. It's just got more That's where it does most of its motion. The phase 2 is stable, and then it still pops a little down lane. The DNA does most of what it's going to do from like 20 to 40 feet. But I mean, these balls are very, very reminiscent of each other. And I think that you could play them. This is more of a shape difference. Like if the phase 2 is a little bit too long, too wiggly, or too sharp, the DNA is going to be earlier and balance that out more. But if the DNA is a little bit too slow down lane and you need a little bit more angle, phase 2 has, you know, that little bit. And it's hard to see on video. You'd understand when you're actually throwing them, but the phase 2 is a little bit longer. I can tell you from personal experience, phase 2 is a little bit longer, is a little bit sharper. It's not quite as stable in the mid lane, where it does not do so much in the mid lane as the DNA does. I'll just shut up and let you watch here a little bit for a second. And see there on those last couple shots, he threw it too hard. That's something you've got to have the eye for. But I can't. That's one of those things is people don't want to watch like hour and a half like I'm in the middle of here. People don't want to watch hour and a half long reviews. So I try to pack as much as I can into 10 or 15 minutes, which even still feels too long. But I wish that I don't know. I just wish this stuff would work out a little bit better, because this video is not going to get a ton of views because of how long it is. And so it's a kind of a crappy balance, but this is more helpful. This is more informational. So whatever, I don't really, I'm done playing the YouTube game. I just want to make stuff that I like, make stuff that I think has value. And so on this, he is juicing. He's juicing this. Now there, he slowed down a little bit. See, now you can see he's. Let me back it up here. Here towards the middle, when the ball starts not hooking, watch how fast he's throwing it. Like, that's nice, slow, even tempo. Gives the ball time to hook. Just pay real close attention to his speed. That's still nice and even tempo. That one's going to hook. You can see almost in his backswing too. That one's nice, even tempo. That one's still nice and slow. That one's nice and slow. See, he banged on that. You see at the bottom? Let me back up a couple shots. All right, nice, even, slow tempo. Gives it time, it hooks. Then this next one, he zips it right off his hand. And not that one, next one. That one's nice and slow. Bang. See how much faster that was? And it didn't have time to roll, react, do anything. So if you're watching this live on a video and I'm talking about whatever I'm talking about, you're just going, oh, that ball didn't hook. It's like, no, he threw it harder. Let me back up again here, and this will probably show a couple shots. That one hooked. Nice, even, smooth. That one hooked. Bang. See how much faster that one was? It didn't have time to roll, didn't have time to react. So that was, he threw it too hard. Bang that one too. And so all of a sudden, instead of the ball not reacting, it's not the ball not reacting, he threw it too hard. So these are those things that you really, really got to train your eyes for. And some people are waiting for the ball to, oh, that ball didn't hook. What happened there? Or this ball hooked too much or whatever else. It's when you train your eyes to see these things, then you can tell exactly what's going on. And on these last couple, he just juiced them too much. He got through that one, but he kept it tighter. He kept his angles a little bit more closed. And that one just zipped it again a little bit too much. I think he slows back down again here. Not meaning to get off topic, but it does relate to the ball reaction. It is an important explanation for why the ball's doing what it's doing. You can see he's gradually getting straighter and straighter here again, even though he zipped that one a little bit. And this is important to do, you know, playing around with throwing it too hard, throwing it too slow, throwing it right, throwing it left, whatever else is important testing to kind of see what the ball's strength and weaknesses are. There's always a trade-off. All right. So now we're going to go back and I'm going to show you the DNA again before we move into me, just to give you a refresher here. Once again, this first one's the box shot that's obviously his lack of skill. It's harder to tell on video. The DNA does roll heavier. It's heavier rolling and smoother than the Phase 2. These two work very well together, but to a certain extent, it is kind of splitting hairs. This is one of those things, like the difference between these two balls, until you average like 210, 220, or a competitive bowler bowling on really tough stuff, for all intents and purposes, there's no difference. Or there's not enough difference. Like, it was funny remember when Rory McIlroy signed with Nike, and he sucked for like a year and a half because he just didn't match up to their clubs. And I'm like, how is a TaylorMade 5-iron different than a Nike 5-iron? Like, that didn't make any sense to me at all, but they're so good that they can tell the differences in these things. They can tell the differences in a golf ball, in between different golf balls. I have no idea. I go out and hit one and it still goes that way. So no matter what I'm hitting. But but I can tell you at James's level, you know, the DNA is earlier, is a little bit stronger, and is smoother than the Phase 2. Even though it's very difficult to tell on paper, but there are situations where he doesn't bring his Phase 2 to league and fire it down the side and average 250. He does that with the DNA though, because it's a little bit earlier, a little bit smoother. The Phase 2 is a little bit less core, a little bit more responsive, and so he doesn't quite have that look. If he tries to play straight, it's a little bit too fast, and if he gets in a little bit, then he might as well be throwing something else. But the DNA just gives him that early read and then that blend down lane to where he can just kind of push it into the spot, and it slows down and just kind of rounds right into the pocket. I mean, he's got that much room and the pocket's this big. He does have an alpha crux, but I don't think I've got any alpha footage, believe it or not. So, zing, goodbye. And it does the same thing. They have the same misses. They're both, the Phase 2 and the DNA are both a little speed sensitive. If you zing them too much, they're not going to read. But yeah, this is what it looks like for him on a house shot. And he's even a little bit further right of that, but he just has the frickin' trough from second arrow on a house shot. Like, bang. I mean, that's just what he does. I think I might have some reality stuff. Let me check. Whoops. Hang on. Loop that. I might have some reality video from him. Does not look like it. I've got some reality video from me. Skill issue. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and switch sides because you guys want to watch me throw the ball. It's getting better. Not really, but it's getting better. All right, so I polished mine. I took mine down to 1,000 and then shined it up because mine out of the box, I think my mix outhooked it. I didn't even turn the, I didn't even, with him, we're just like, well, let's put a few games on it and, you know, let's see what happened. He threw it again, like I said, 7, 8, 9, 10 shots, and it just kept getting worse and worse. I threw mine like 5 or 6, and I'm like, I've already been here before. I've had it with everything since the Night Road, basically. I think the exotic was the only one that I didn't have trouble with out of the box. So, I didn't even turn the camera on. I just took it back. I resurfaced it down to 1,000 and then finished it with step 2. Torrent, do you think it had similar characteristics to the DNA? Yes. The Torrent is now it's a much weaker ball, of course, but the shape is that of the DNA and the phase 2, kind of that climbing arc. If you want a Torrent replacement, that is the Hype Solid. Very, very close. So anyway, the left side, there's not any track friction, so the ball naturally goes longer and is a little bit sharper. There's a whole lot more balance from the front to back, more than anything, on the right side from all that track friction, all that wear, all that use. So naturally, everything on the left side goes longer and is sharper than it is on the right side. That's why you see lefties bending urethane. Like urethane shapes on the left side, and it's ridiculous. It's amazing. It's just crazy. But mine, I have used this ball a lot. I have liked a lot of stronger balls. I liked the Proton, not quite. It was a little forward for me. I really like the Gem. It's just not. It's way too strong. The Reality, it looks sexy, but it's too long and sharp, and it wants to be forward. So it just is a problem for me. The DNA it's a pocket magnet. It doesn't rev super early. It doesn't roll heavy. It just stabilizes like crazy in the mid lane and then kind of tumbles. Like you have something like a Nova that just tumbles the entire way down the lane. This one is kind of like phase 2 up front, and then it turns into like a Nova down lane. It hits the spot and walks, and it's continuous. And it just, no matter where I'm at, it stabilizes in the same place. Gosh, I really love this ball. You can see that it just, no matter where I'm standing, it does the same thing in the same place. Like some balls, they do different things. They either resist angle, they like angle, they're really sharp from straight, but as soon as you move in, they slow down, or they're really early from straight, and then they go too long as soon as you move in. This one just does the same thing from everywhere. Yeah, cool. I should have gotten my my Kool-Aid mug. I've actually got that for live streams. I've got you were watching the Cardinal. You were watching the other day. I've got the Kool-Aid man and the un-Kool-Aid man. I'm definitely drinking the Kool-Aid on this one. James wasn't for a while. James is he's like, if I have to, like, I'm trapped right of third arrow. If I have to get in with this ball at all, if it's the right ball, I'm trapped on the ditch. But then he can't shoot under 250 with it. the first game of League because it just is a pocket magnet. And this one is throwable. I've polished other stuff before. I'll show the reality next. I've polished other stuff before, but it just like the gem is too. Let me take this out, bring it back in. Stuttering. But it's just, it does the same thing from left to right, and that's why I say that the asymmetry, it's using its strength in the mid lane rather than down lane. Like a lot of asymmetric stuff uses that torque down lane to force the ball to corner or to force it to finish. This one doesn't, the DNA is not really, it doesn't really, again, we saw it with James, but it's not really forcing it to finish, it's forcing it to stabilize. And see, this ball does exactly the same thing from straight as it is when I get in. You see it stabilize right there, 30, 35-ish feet. It stabilizes, it reads, and then it walks. And again, it's not using it for big turn on the back end. I mean, that one was a little bit slow down lane. But it's just, and again, you can see it start revving up, but it's not hooking or digging as soon as it starts revving up. Like it hits friction, see it's spinning, and then it goes an extra couple feet before it starts reading or doing anything. It's slow enough response that it makes it really consistent, but it's heavy enough rolling that it gives me a little bit of room to the left. It gives me a little bit of the room to the right because it's so, like I got that one a little bit out and then at 710, but that was a terrible shot. I also feel like it gives me more room inside. It does give me a little bit of room outside because of how heavy it rolls. No clickbait urethane on house is good videos for you. Yeah. Yeah, the Zen U it's not really like urethane, but it hooks so much more. It corners so much more on the left side than it does on the right side. It's absurd. I need to get more Zen U video because now that I've let it lane shine, animal. All right, so this is stuttering. I think we've seen enough of this. I'm going to pull the reality in. The reality rolls so sexy for me, but I don't know that I've ever had a ball give me less to work with. Like, it looks sexy, and then it just will not hit the pocket or strike. I have that with it. Like, it just gives me nothing. And you'll look at a few shots that's like, oh my God, that looks sexy. Like, that looks sexy. Why would you not throw that ball? That shot excited me. That shot, I got it out a little bit further, and that one looked pretty good too. Just give it a minute. That one was pretty good. Same shot as the first one, basically, and it was a little too quick. And I move in a little, and that one's not quite going to make it. And that one, again, goes a little too long. So you can already see the difference in stability. That one, I didn't get out as far. I didn't hook too much. So you can see I'm not making, that one was pretty good. I'm not making any different quality of shots than I was with the DNA, but it's just the reality. Again, that one went too long and then it puked. It goes a little too long and then it pukes. So it was too deep, definitely, so I was going to move back. That's so got it in a little bit, and that one went too high. And that one, see, this right there, that is a 100% product of being crazy uncomfortable with the ball. Let me go back a few. I mean, I am in an absolute shoebox. Unless I throw it perfect, beyond perfect, I'm not going to strike with this ball. That one was a little bit too long and flat. That one straightened out on me. It got the job done, but I'm going to leave that, 7, 8 out of 10 times. That one I straightened back up again because I just didn't, it was just going to go too long on the inside. No, this is not a house shot. This is Kegel Chromium. 7 to 1. Okay, it's stuttering again. I love when it does this. Yeah, Chromium, it's 7 to 1. It's challenge pattern. And so all I do, the ball either goes too long or is too sharp. So if I throw it absolutely perfect, it'll get there. That one was pretty okay. It looks better from straight than it does from deeper, but I just, with oil on the ditch, I just don't have the... And see, if I label 3 of them in a row, six board, I'm targeting 5. Targeting 5. That one's 5.5, 6. And 5 board. So yeah, if I label them all, even then, so even then, see, look at these first few shots. 5 board. I got that one into the lane pretty quick. That one into the lane pretty quick. I hit 4 on that one, kicked the 7. Got that one in the lane pretty good on 5 board, and it hooks too much. So it's like, tell me what the difference is between. Tell me what the major difference is between these shots here. Because if I can basically, I mean, this is about as accurate as you can realistically be on a condition that's really not that hard. Like, what did I do on that shot that made it stop 2 feet early and go high? And I move in a little bit, and then it doesn't want to get there. Anyhow, how similar is the Hype Pearl to the IQ Ruby? Sorry if this has already been suggested. The Hype Pearl is fairly close because it's a, and we might actually, I might be able to show the difference for Angel when we get to that ball, which I should probably do here fairly soon, or this is gonna take forever because this is the DNA and Ruby live stream. There's so much to talk about. So let me pop something else up here for, and we'll get into Ruby here because I think we've beat the DNA into the ground. I do have some infinite. This is on Chromium, but I think I filmed a few balls before this, so. It does shape quite a bit more, and it's still a very, I mean, it's still, you know, a very strong ball. It's got almost as strong of a cover. It's got almost as strong of a core, and just because it's pearl doesn't really mean a whole lot. This ball does not act like you'd think a stereotypical pearl. The Absolute acts more like a pearl, and it's a hybrid. So the Infinite is a really good step down from the DNA when you need something that's going to pop a little bit more. Something that's fairly similar on the reaction shape, because if you like this general shape, or if this general shape is working, and if you want to just drop down, get a little bit more angle, shape, whatever else, this is a great ball to step down into because it rolls very similar. It's just a small step down. And you can see again, though, it's still not even as stable as the DNA, which is crazy. So, all right, let's move on to the Ruby. Let me check and see if there's anything else in here I might want to stop at for the moment, because I have drilled some other stuff that James has not. I don't really think that there's anything. We've seen it against the TNT, against Supernova, whatever. Let me pull the TNT up because I also polished that one. Loop TNT cut. I think this will. I resurfaced this one before I even threw it. I didn't expect. I just wanted to show a different look. I didn't know that. I thought with a solid ball we're not going to have the same problems, but we did. So again, it is. This one is really reminiscent of the DNA. It has that. It chugs a little bit more. It's a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit sharper. But I favored the DNA because it doesn't lock up or go forward quite like the TNT, and the TNT is just, again, a little too. It's a little too clean and sharp for how chuggy it is. But generally speaking, it does look. It looks pretty good, and it looks pretty close. But again, it's got that. Again, it's got that chug kind of. It wants to be cleaner and sharper than it is, and so it's a nice kind of balance between having a super early and chuggy core and a little bit cleaner and more responsive cover. It kind of meets somewhere in the middle. And I think as bad as the reviews have looked for this thing, I think it's a whole lot better ball than the reviews gave it credit for, but it's just because everybody else threw it out of the box. So. And so it just, see, again, you can see the difference between this and the DNA where and not saying that I'd use them in the same, if I was using a TNT strength ball, I'd probably be, I don't know that we don't really have another TNT strength ball because the Cosmos is stronger, Phase 5's weaker, Zen Soul is even a little bit stronger than the TNT. I don't have a Soul, but I don't have a Soul either way you look at it. But yeah, I just don't like it's just a little flat. It's just a little bit too much chug too early, and it kind of chugs and then sometimes. So all right, we're going to go on ahead and move on to the Ruby. We're going to start with Angel here. Angel Ruby cut. There we go. And she loves IQs, period. It doesn't really matter what kind of an IQ it is. We took hers down to 1,000 and then took it back up to react to stuff, which is about a 3,000 grit sheen. And all things IQ with lower differentials roll good for her. So this is kind of a gimme here. First few shots, she was playing a little bit with her angles, speeds, whatever else. But as soon as she kind of figures out the right tempo, she wasn't really doing a bunch of things, but she kind of figured out the right tempo here. Right kind of look, right kind of angle. Sometimes you don't have to change a whole lot just to kind of fine tune things or get them right. Like an IQ normally does, it will leave corners. This is once again on chromium, so we're on the same pattern. And so even with the surface, this isn't exactly a ball that you'd really want to start with on this pattern. So looking as good as it does is fairly impressive. She might actually be able to start with this ball on this pattern. Oh, whoops. There's more questions. Oh, crap. My chat got stuck. I wondered why people weren't sending questions in. All right. JR Pro Shop has a video showing the IQ-TO. You mean the Ruby? To be stronger and more angular than the Fate and the Revenant? It's not stronger. I think it is more angular than both of those, but the Ruby is definitely not a stronger ball than the Fate or the Revenant. Because you want to see my face. This camera is not reading my face against the background. So, turn this back on. Would you say the Ruby is a good step down from the reality as it would be? The TNT is more like a big brother to the IQ Tour, definitely. Would you say the Ruby is a good step down from the delivery? No, they hear the. Oh yeah, you probably got a delivery, so the dogs are gonna go nuts here. You'll get used to that. Would you say the Ruby is a good step down from the reality as it would be for the DNA? The Ruby is so far down from the reality or the DNA. What do you think about the X1 versus the DNA? The X1 is very similar to the Infinite, so that step down would be about the same. Thank you, puppies. For someone who wants a benchmark ball but can't control a Phase 2 or a Zen Soul, would you say the TNT would work? It's still too strong. I think you'd want a Hype Solid. Isn't the TNT supposed to be a idle replacement? No. Because the idle had micro tracks, which is basically Storm's NRG, and the TNT has E-tracks, which is the solid version of the X2 cover. And so you're basically comparing an RSTX3 to an RSTX2, and those two aren't, because the X3 has micro tracks, the X2 has E-tracks plus. So the comparing the idle to the TNT is like comparing the X3 to the X2. It's not supposed to be a replacement. I think it's a little bit closer than it looks on paper, but still, it just doesn't roll like it. Angel's left the chat. They love putting you next to the dinosaurs. Yeah, we like the Dragon Ramp pair. 23 and 24, it gives us room to film, set the camera up so we're not encroaching on anybody else. It's a whole lot easier to film on lane 24 since we have that kind of walking space. You might have covered it, but what's the difference between the Ruby and the Gold? I think that the Ruby and Gold are closer than the Ruby or Gold is to the Emerald. I didn't have a Gold, but it was longer and it popped more than the Emerald. The Emerald was earlier and smoother. I'm going ahead and play that while we've seen enough of this. So, Emerald cut. So the Emerald is smoother. It's a little earlier and a little smoother, and so you can see that there's still really, I mean, it's the same ball in different colors. And I did take this one, I did do the same surfacing thing on this one as I did with the Ruby. This one's just the smallest bit tamer down lane. It's a little heavier rolling and it's a little bit slower down lane. But other than that, they're really close. What new balls we get? For once, finally, we actually have 2 balls release without another announcement like a week before these. You know, they want us to focus on, well, it's, you know, this is release day for this ball and this ball. It's like, yeah, but you just announced 2 other balls like a week ago. Nobody wants to talk about these now because they've got the new shiny stuff that you just announced. So, I mean, really, I need to be talking about what people are interested in. I'm not going to do smoke. Oh, no, don't be interested in those. Those aren't out yet. We can't sell you those yet. You have to be interested in these. Stupid. I agree with seeing issues on nearly every SPI ball surface out of the box. Point of reference, I buy at least half the releases each year. It would be nice to not have to resurface every ball. Yeah, again, that's why I've been recommending people do resurface them, but having to resurface every single ball out of the box. I used to like factory polish. I was one of the few. Everybody else is like, gosh, I don't know how you do it. That's the first thing I do if it's factory polish. I just take that stuff off, and I'm like, I like the 1500 polish. So, Angel does not have a Goldie. She never had. Actually, her first IQ was the Tour Nano, the original Tour Nano solid, and then she got emeralds, and then she loved the emerald, and then she's like, we drilled her an IQ solid because she hadn't had one of those, and she likes that one quite a bit. So, is the IQ Ruby pretty much the Fatal Venom from Motive? Yes and no. I think the IQs are the Fatal people kind of didn't really like that one, but a very similar idea type of ball. I think the Fatal is a little stronger, a little. The ideas are similar, but the Fatal was more of a hit and miss type of thing for people, I think. Let me see what I've got from the Hyped Pearl. I don't know if I have any. Not have any Hyped Pearl for Angel, especially not that's going to be on this. I could compare it to the Revenant here a little bit later. Let's see here. What did I see up here? Let's take a look at the Fate. Same pattern. No, this is not the one that I wanted. What did I? That's not what I wanted. Oh, balls. Gosh, I got to figure out because I filmed new stuff for the Fate. Because I've got to find whichever video I did that for. Let me play something different while I'm looking for that. Nope, not that. Let me see here. I guess I can play this one while I'm looking for the one that I want, but this is the. I did film more for this. I've got to see where, because I did, once we took it to React-A-Scuff, this is with the polish on it. This isn't with the React-A-Scuff. I've just got to figure out where I've got that. Can't remember which video I did it in. I just got some more footage because I put it in a video here recently. That's gonna bother me because I did put React-A-Scuff on the Fate and it looked amazing. But yeah, she really likes this one too. The shapes are fairly similar, but the Fate is it's not a bunch stronger than the Ruby, but it is very noticeably stronger. It's a solid ball up from my Ruby. It's a solid ball up from the Ruby for both of us. Whoops. No, shut up. Hi, buddy. Yeah, I just can't remember which video I did it in. That's unfortunate. So anyway, let me see what else we've got here. I think that's probably about all for Angel that I've got here. The Ruby looks good, but I don't see ever getting that far down on my bag on the left. Have you been throwing it at all in games? It's faking me out. So I'm going ahead and add my Ruby. So it's just one of those things where it's, again, yeah, I shouldn't be throwing it, but it rolls so good that I can't help myself. But it's just not quite enough cover, and so it tends to be a little too long, a little too, it's either too responsive or too long. It's hard for me to find that happy medium with it. That core is so early rolling that it wants to go early. But God, it just rolls so good. This is the exact type of roll that I like out of a ball. I like the strong, rolly, kind of continuous stuff. This just rolls so good that it makes me feel like I can always throw it on everything, but then it's just a little too touchy. So I think it's kind of a trap ball for me. Very rarely am I going to see the kind of right kind of friction, or because again, if the shot doesn't start off, working for it, it's just probably not going to work into it. So I have to find, and the house that I bowl at, there's a little too much volume for this to be viable at. Usually it's in between a 6-pin and a 7-pin, because I either can't quite get it down the lane or can't quite get it back up the hill. Any tips if my Ruby has been reading really sharp? I just either take some Reacta scuff to it, or take like a 4,000, 3,000 pad to it. So that will kind of get rid of that edge of the polish. Because when something's polished, it's not going to read as well in the oil. It's going to read really sharp on the dry. And so that's what's making it sharp. It's kind of hydroplaning on the oil and then really jerking when it hits friction. But gosh, this. Yeah, I mean, it just rolls so good that I can't help myself, but it has been trapping me here lately. I've it's tricky being a staffer, because you always, and anytime, whether you're a staffer or not, even though you go through a bunch of balls, you always want to throw the new stuff. You just want to throw it because it's new and shiny and whatever else. And I end up throwing it when I really shouldn't be throwing it. You think a longer pin would let you play straighter with the Ruby? I know how early that core likes to roll. Yes, but then it's going to make it too sharp and forward. That's the problem with layouts on anything on the left side of the lane, because as soon as you go one direction, it screws something else up. So this is the problem. That's why I went with on this ball, I went with a 4.5-inch pin, because I've done 5-inch pins on this core, and because of how low the differential is, it really bunches up the flare rings. So I don't like using like a 5-inch pin on this core, because the flare rings get really close together. and I don't like that. Plus, it makes the ball go a little bit longer and makes it a little bit straighter off the end of the pattern. So it still wants to roll heavy, but it wants to go longer and then be sharp, but also be a little forward. I drill my IQ tours normally with 4-inch pins because I like being able to, because that's going to make it more, it's going to make it strong, going to make it more continuous, but still that differential is going to keep the flare down. So this one, because I've done that with, I had 4 emeralds and they all sucked. I had 2 of them righty, 2 of them lefty, 5-inch pins, 4-inch. I had a 5 and a 4-inch pin on both sides, and they just all sucked. And so I thought with this, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to split the gap. I'm going to go 4.5. So it won't be so early and round, but it won't be so long and like jerky and whatever else. And I got exactly the in-between middle of stuff, but it looks good. But I mean, sometimes it just does not strike. It's like one of these things where it's a little bit too early, a little bit too responsive, or maybe not too early. It's just a little too responsive. I got that one in a little bit, but you know, I didn't necessarily want it that far out to begin with. Still just a little quick, little early. But I worry about covering boards with an IQ. That one's a little better, but you can see I was kind of at the back of it, and the ball hit the head pin and went left instantly. But I mean, just look, and that one was great. That was a great shot. I think I just wrapped the living hell out of this 7-pin here. I mean, great shot, loved it, rolls great, and then just wraps around it. It's just a little bit too much of a trap ball, but it rolls perfect. I mean, it just rolls perfect. I love the way that it rolls. So I'm going to pull in my fate. Same pattern. Same surface prep. You can see that one's diggier. Definitely stronger. Very similar shape though. The core is just a little bit higher RG and definitely quite a bit higher diff. But the cover, REX Pearl, is a lot stronger than R2S Pearl. And it's the same rolly, round, perfect shape that I love, but it's blendier. It does blend the lane better, both front to right and front to back. Hooks more. This is the Ruby's a nice complement to it. It's a nice step down from it. But this ball is so ridiculously good that it just almost feels unfair to compare anything to it. This ball is just so ridiculously good that it goes everywhere. It seems like it's in play on everything. You want to talk about drinking the Kool-Aid? I am chugging the Kool-Aid. Like, you've got people working in shifts to mix the stuff for me. Yep, that's the fate. Do you still ever experiment with layouts, tweaking your buffer to balance the pin position either direction, maybe? I have, but I found out on symmetrics, the most I can go is like pin in the ring. I more play with links. So 4-inch, 5-inch, 4.5, 5-inch pins on symmetrics. I've tried pin down, awful. I don't need something to go longer and be sharper or more forward. So layouts, I've pretty well found what works, and I do play with the pin position, but up or down, I just can't go pin down on symmetrics on the left. It's just wretched. I have a couple that are pin in the ring, so I kind of split the difference. That works. I was throwing my promotion last night in a tournament that was pin and ring, but even still, it was a little touchy. And that's weird to say that the promotion is touchy. Let me pull in the Revenant, because that's another one that's, whoops. That's another one that's in the same zone. Revenant, resurface. So same thing here. This thing was a marble until I resurfaced and polished it again. But it's kind of in this same zone because it rolls really similar to both these balls. It has a weaker core, kind of. It's got a lot higher RG, but it's also got a lot higher differential, so it's longer and boomier than the Ruby is, but it's got a stronger cover. It's still this round shaping look though. So it's longer and quicker than the Fate, but not quite as strong. And it's also longer and quicker than the Ruby, but a little stronger. So this ball is actually between the Fate and the Ruby. I've used the Revenant a lot. Pairing this back and forth with the Fate. If the Fate's a little too much and a little too smooth, then the Revenant gets me down the lane and gives me a little bit more pop. I think it's pretty easy to see on video. Sometimes things are a whole lot easier to see on the, or feel than actually see on video, but I think it's easy to see the Revenant's going quite a bit longer than the Fate and then popping a little bit more on the back end. It looks somewhat similar to the Ruby, but the Ruby, I think, is earlier even than this ball, but this ball hooks more. Fate, Ruby, and X2, all the same spot in the bag. I love my X2. No, yes, but no. I think those are two spots. I think that the X2 and Fate have some overlap because the X2 is asymmetric, but it has a weaker cover. Fate has a stronger cover, but a little bit weaker core. So I think that the X2 and the Fate are in the same spot. You go X2 if you want a little bit more length and shape, and you want the Fate if you want a little bit earlier, a little bit smoother. The Ruby is a definite step down from both of those, though. So the Fate and the X2 are the same spot. The Ruby is a decided step down for me. Now, what's your average ball speed? 17-ish off my hand, 16.5, 16. I don't really throw it that hard. It'd be nice to throw a little bit harder because it's hard to be successful with. I mean, if you don't throw 18 on the left side, it's hard to compete because the speed actually helps blend the lane out. Rolling the ball like I do on the left side is dumb and bad. You either need to fluff it on the left side or you need higher speed to help blend the lane front to back. That's the worst thing. The side to side isn't the concern as much as the front to back. You've got to blend. If you can blend the front to back, the side to side is going to get blended. So we'll go back to my Ruby once again just to refresh you before we finish up here and get out of here. The Ruby has a lot earlier core. So the Revenant is 254 RG, the Ruby is 249 RG. So the Ruby wants to do more earlier. So yeah, you either have to be Norm Duke or chuck the crap out of it. So yeah, this kind of medium speed rolling lefty thing. I used to have, now that I'm getting better, my rev rate's gone up. I roll the ball more, and my scores have gone down because of it. I don't zing it enough. I try to roll it, shape it, whatever else. I've got to do something different because this rolling the ball on the left side is just tap steady. But yeah, you gotta either be super super straight with it, low rev, point it, or you have to throw it 18. That's why most of the guys that do roll, like if you just watch the tour, the ones that roll it are throwing urethane, and the ones that throw it hard can use more stuff. But that's why everybody throws urethane, because it hooks early and then it blends the down lane. I mean, stuff on the left side goes 80 feet and then turns sideways. So yeah, yeah, Mike Albee is a little bit different, and they bowled on house shots. Well, he went from bowling on urethane to then the tour was bowling on super easy house shots there for a while. But he kind of did the inside in thing. Jason Couch had a big rev rate, and he rolled it, but he also threw 1,000,000 miles an hour. So yeah, Packy, Spencer. Butters rolls it, but he throws urethane all the time too. And when he's not throwing urethane, he really slow hooks the whole lane. I don't have the rev rate. If I had more rev rate, then the speed wouldn't be as much of a factor. I could move in and use the rev rate, but yeah. So yeah, this ball just rolls so well that I've got to take it everywhere, but it is what it is. So I think that's probably going to wrap it up. I've rambled for long enough about this, and I think we've seen everything that we wanted to see. My rev rate's 325-ish, 350. It goes back and forth between 3 and 350, I think. So I might have some more comparisons coming, but I was kind of expecting there to be another announcement before now, because they haven't been able to just put something out and let it have its moment without announcing something like 3-4 days before something releases. Yes, this is a great format for comparison video. I love being able to interact with people, but then this ends up being an hour and 45 minutes long, and people go to turn it on later if they didn't watch it live and go, oh God, I'm not going to watch that. So it's, dog, what are you doing? Hi, buddy. Hi. Sorry, I got you. So anywho, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody go here. If you missed anything, you want to see the DNA and a lot of comparisons, then go on ahead and start the video over again, watch it. I talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, start a timer. That's not going to work. There's so much stuff to talk about, and I try to cram stuff into a review, and I try to make it palatable so that more people will watch it. But this is just what it's going to have to be. I can't shut up. There's so many things to talk about, and I don't think that putting a microphone on and going out and throwing 6 or 7 shots is an actual review. So if you watch a product review, if you go to buy something that costs like $300, you want an actual product review, demos and little tidbits are fine. But thank you, buddy. I know I'm almost done. But if you want this is just what it takes for an actual review of something. So it's long and boring and drawn out, but you know what you're buying, damn it. So thanks everybody for watching. You can always leave comments, requests, questions. I'll do this again. This is kind of what I'm going to do going forward, actually. I like this format a whole lot better than trying to like piece things together, and it's so hard to try to fit all of this kind of stuff into a 10 or 15 minute video. Plus, it's a whole lot more fun to hit the chat and actually answer the questions as you have them, that I can then explain in the video so that everybody else can see them, rather than just kind of catching up with people later in the comment section. So, say what? Is that a polka dot bra on the door there? No, that's a bag. That's just a bag. Sorry to disappoint you. Storm Dog. Come here, buddy. Hi, buddy. You gonna tell everybody bye? You see? You see, that's you. That's what a bad dog looks like. You just want to go out and dig more holes, don't you? I know, buddy. Is it time to go? I missed him. I know. They're all saying it's time to go. I've got a few things to do. Need to get some chow. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it. Definitely appreciate everybody hanging out for as long as you did here. Everybody that catches this later and actually makes it to this point, congratulations, you did it. I know, Pig. And they haven't announced anything else yet. So again, DNA Ruby release day. If you're interested, go pick them up. Again, code Rosedall 10. I made all these other tickers and never put anything up. So I got my Bowler's Mart links for the DNA and Ruby are in the description down there. You can visit the SRGBBFS group on Facebook for all things SPI, including new, used, rare, and international. And I'm on staff with Turbo, and even if I was using nothing but Turbo before I even got the contract. So I would not use another brand if I didn't have a contract, and I wouldn't take a contract from another company. So we use the Turbo Quad Classics. Really love those. Me and Angel use slugs. James uses switch grip. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Do any doggo donations anytime soon? No, we just normally do the once a year thing. We will take extra donations if you just send them in, of course, and we'll forward them on to the appropriate parties. But we don't have any giveaway things scheduled. We normally just do that at Christmas because that's the time that they need it the most. I know, you're such a bad dog. All right, we're out. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will